With the excitement of celebrating my birthday already soaked into glasses of whiskey and a cloud of shisha smoke, I didn't notice anything strange when my boss, Mr. Harper, ordered another round. Nothing in his eyes, no signal, no twitch warned me that I was no longer just a guest at a party. I was merchandise. A young woman being analyzed, priced, and quietly traded between him and one of his billionaire friends like it was Monday morning on the stock market. Their murmurs floated around me, vague yet surreal, and even though I sat right between them, it felt like I was overhearing something abominable being made official. I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of the night everything changed. Before I take you into the full story, do me a small favor, hit the subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And as you listen, rate this story from 0 to 10. Your feedback helps me bring you more billionaire twists like this one. The club pulsed with golden light and bass that vibrated through Louise's chest. She leaned back in the velvet booth, feeling the warmth of the whiskey spread through her limbs, the sweet smoke of the shisha curling around her like a lazy embrace. 21. She was finally 20-1. Mr. Harper, her boss at the marketing firm where she worked on contract, had insisted on throwing this party. He'd rented out a VIP section at Mercer's, one of the most exclusive clubs in the city, owned by some billionaire she'd never met. Everything was on him tonight. The drinks, the hookah, the glittering bottles of champagne that kept appearing at their table like magic. To Louise, Mr. Harper raised his glass, his smile broad and fatherly. May this year bring you everything you deserve. She clinked glasses with him and the other colleagues who'd been invited, mostly senior staff she barely knew. The music swallowed their laughter. She took another sip, letting herself relax into the celebration. Then Mr. Harper leaned closer, his voice cutting through the noise. There's someone I want you to meet. Louise turned. A man was approaching their table, tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent for 6 months. His hair was dark and perfectly styled. His watch caught the club lights and threw them back in sharp flashes. He moved like someone who owned every space he walked into, because he did. Louise, this is Cashin Mercer, Mr. Harper announced, gesturing toward the stranger with a sweep of his hand. Owner of this fine establishment. Cashin, this is Louise, the young woman I was telling you about. Cashin extended his hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm. His eyes, a pale gray that seemed to see straight through her, lingered on her face just a moment too long. Happy birthday, he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, like silk pulled tight over steel. Thank you, Louise managed, withdrawing her hand. Cashin slid into the booth beside Mr. Harper, directly across from her. Another round of drinks appeared. The conversation shifted: business talk, investments, markets she didn't understand. But every few minutes, Cashin's gaze would return to her, assessing, calculating. Then Mr. Harper's tone changed. It became lighter, almost jovial, but there was something underneath it that made Louise's stomach tighten. You know, Louise just turned 21, he said, as if Cashin didn't already know. Perfect age, really. Prime of life. Perfect age to start thinking about the future, settling down, building something lasting. Louise blinked, the whiskey fog in her head clearing just a bit. I'm sorry, what? Cashin leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. Your boss tells me you're ambitious, hardworking, that you've been taking on extra jobs just to make ends meet while your contract position stays uncertain. She glanced at Mr. Harper, confused. Yes, but he also tells me you're smart, Cashin continued, his eyes never leaving hers. That you come from a good family. That you'd make an excellent partner for the right man. The word partner landed like a stone in her chest. Mr. Harper chuckled, swirling his drink. What Cashin and I have been discussing, Louise, is an opportunity. A life-changing one, really. You're young, beautiful, intelligent, and Cashin here is looking for someone to share his life with. Someone genuine. Someone who hasn't been corrupted by this world of excess. Louise's mouth opened, then closed. The music felt too loud now, the smoke too thick. She looked between the two men, waiting for the punchline, for someone to laugh and tell her this was some elaborate joke. But Cashin was watching her with that same steady, unblinking gaze, And Mr. Harper was smiling like he'd just brokered the deal of the century. I'm not, Louise's voice cracked. She cleared her throat. I'm not looking to get married. Of course not, Mr. Harper said quickly, as if she'd just said something charmingly naive. You're 21. But that's exactly the point. You're at the perfect age, young enough to start a family, old enough to understand what a rare opportunity this is. Cashin's expression didn't change. I can offer you stability, security. You'd never have to worry about contract work again, or side jobs, or rent. I appreciate that, but I didn't come here to, Louise. Mr. Harper's voice hardened just slightly. Do you know how difficult it was to secure even a contract position for you? How many strings I had to pull? The market is brutal right now. You're lucky to have what you have. And here we are, presenting you with a chance to never have to struggle again, and you're going to throw it away because of what? Some romanticized notion of finding love on your own terms. Her face burned. The other colleagues at the table had gone quiet, their eyes darting away, pretending not to listen. I just don't understand why this is happening right now, Louise said, her voice barely above a whisper. On my birthday, without any warning, because opportunities don't wait, Mr. Harper replied. Cashin is a busy man. He's offering you something most women would kill for. Cashin leaned back, his expression unreadable. I'm not trying to pressure you. But your boss is right. I don't have time to date in the traditional sense. I need someone capable, someone real. And from what I've been told, you fit that description. Louise felt like she was sinking. The booth seemed smaller, the walls of the club pressing in. She looked at Cashin at the cold elegance of his posture, the way he spoke about her like she was a resume he was reviewing. What about love? She asked, the words escaping before she could stop them. Cashin's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Love is a luxury. What I'm offering is a foundation. The rest can be built over time. Mr. Harper raised his glass again. To new beginnings. Louise didn't raise hers. She sat there, trapped between two men who had clearly already made up their minds. Her birthday celebration now feeling like a negotiation she hadn't agreed to enter. She scanned the club, desperate for an exit, for some way out of this suffocating conversation. That's when she saw him, a young man in a black staff uniform, walking past their booth with a tray balanced on one hand. He glanced at her just for a second, and in that brief moment, she saw something in his eyes. Recognition. Concern. He moved past, disappearing into the crowd. Louise's pulse quickened. She didn't know who he was, but something about that look made her feel, for the first time that night, like she wasn't completely alone. Louise's hands trembled around her glass. Cashin was explaining something about his portfolio, his real estate holdings, his expectations for a wife who could host dinners and represent his brand at charity events. Mr. Harper nodded along, interjecting with comments about how perfect Louise would be for that role. She felt like a mannequin on display. Then, movement. The same young man from before approached the table, his expression polite and professional. He stopped beside her, bending slightly to speak near her ear. Excuse me, miss. I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you come with me for a moment? There's a situation with your coat check. Louise blinked. She hadn't checked a coat, but his eyes held hers, urgent and steady, and she understood immediately. This was a lifeline. Oh, she said quickly, setting down her glass. Yes, of course. Mr. Harper frowned. Louise, we're in the middle of a conversation. It'll just take a minute, she said, already sliding out of the booth. Her legs felt shaky beneath her, but she forced them to move. The young man led her through the crowd, weaving between bodies and flashing lights. Louise followed, her heart hammering. She didn't look back. They reached a quieter corridor near the back of the club. The music was muffled here, the air cooler. He stopped and turned to face her, his expression apologetic. There's no problem with any coat check, he said. I could see you needed an out. Louise exhaled, relief flooding through her so fast it made her dizzy. Thank you. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't have to. He ran a hand through his dark hair, glancing back toward the main floor. But you should know, Mr. Mercer doesn't like it when people leave his table without permission. Your boss is probably going to come looking for you. I can't go back there, Louise said, the words spilling out. I can't sit through another minute of that. The young man studied her face, and she saw kindness there. Real, unguarded kindness. There's a back exit, he said. Through the staff area. I can show you, but won't you get in trouble? He shrugged, a small smile pulling at his mouth. I've been in trouble before. I'll survive. He led her deeper into the corridor, past storage rooms and office doors, until they reached a heavy metal door marked emergency exit only. He pushed it open, and cold night air rushed in. Louise stepped into the alley, the sounds of the city replacing the club's bass. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how thin her dress was. Where will you go? He asked. She didn't have an answer. Home wasn't an option. Mr. Harper knew where she lived. He'd probably already called HR by now, and she couldn't go to any of her friends' places. They were all connected to the office somehow. I don't know, she admitted. The young man seemed to make a decision. Wait here. My shift ends in 2 hours. I'll come back and help you figure something out. You don't have to do that, I know. He met her eyes. But I'm going to anyway. Before she could respond, he disappeared back through the door, leaving her alone in the alley. Louise stood there, the adrenaline slowly draining from her body, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. She had no plan, no phone charger, no jacket, just a thin dress and a pair of heels that were already making her feet ache. But for the first time all night, she could breathe. She sat down on the cold concrete steps, pulling her knees to her chest, and waited. The 2 hours crawled by. She watched cars pass at the mouth of the alley, listened to distant sirens, counted the windows in the building across the street. Every few minutes, she worried he wouldn't come back, that this had all been some cruel joke. But then the door opened and he emerged, no longer in his uniform, just jeans and a worn jacket. He carried a backpack over one shoulder. Sorry, he said. They made me help close up. Louise stood, her legs stiff. I can't believe you actually came back. I said I would. He gestured toward the street. Come on. Let's get you somewhere warm. They walked through the city streets, the lights smearing together in Louise's tired eyes. He told her his name was Antonio, Tony for short. He'd been working at Mercer's for 6 months, saving money, trying to figure out his next move. Where are we going? Louise asked. My place. It's not much, but it's safe. And I promise I'm not some creep. You can lock the bedroom door if you want. I'll sleep on the couch. She looked at him, really looked at him. Tony had an open face, the kind that didn't hide things well. She could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the way his jacket was frayed at the cuffs, the scuff marks on his shoes. Okay, she said. His apartment was in a neighborhood Louise had never been to. Narrow streets, old buildings with laundry strung between fire escapes, the smell of cooking drifting from open windows. Tony led her up 3 flights of stairs to a door with peeling paint. Inside, the apartment was small. One main room that served as kitchen, living room, and dining room. A tiny bathroom. A bedroom barely big enough for a bed, but it was clean, and warm, and safe. Make yourself comfortable, Tony said, shrugging off his jacket. You want tea? Coffee? I think I have hot chocolate somewhere. Louise sank onto the couch, suddenly overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger. Hot chocolate sounds perfect. Tony moved around the kitchen, filling a kettle, pulling mugs from a cabinet. Louise watched him, trying to understand why he was helping her, what he wanted in return. But when he handed her the steaming mug and sat down in the chair across from her, careful to keep distance between them, she realized maybe he didn't want anything. Maybe he was just good. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. Tony smiled. Happy birthday, Louise. And despite everything, she found herself smiling back. The first week felt like living in a dream. Louise slept on Tony's bed while he took the couch. Despite her protests, she woke each morning to the smell of coffee and whatever breakfast he'd managed to cobble together: scrambled eggs, toast, once even pancakes that were slightly burned but tasted like comfort. The neighborhood was nothing like the world she'd worked in. Here, people shouted greetings across the street, music poured from open windows at all hours, children played soccer in the alley behind the building. Nobody knew who she was, Nobody was looking for her. It was the freest she'd ever felt. Tony worked most evenings, picking up shifts at Mercer's and another restaurant downtown. During the day, Louise explored the apartment, read books from Tony's small collection, and tried to figure out what came next. She knew she couldn't hide forever. But for now, this was enough. One evening, Tony came home with a bag of groceries and a mischievous smile. "What?" Louise asked, looking up from the novel she'd been reading. "I'm making you real Italian food tonight," he announced. "My grandmother's recipe." "You're going to forget every other meal you've ever had?" Louise laughed. "That's a bold claim. Just wait." She watched him work in the kitchen, his movements confident and easy. He chopped garlic and tomatoes, boiled water for pasta, hummed something under his breath that might have been opera. The apartment filled with the smell of olive oil and basil and something rich and warm. When he finally set the plates down, Louise took one bite and closed her eyes. "Oh my word," she murmured. Tony grinned. "Told you." They ate at the small table by the window, talking about everything and nothing. Tony told her about growing up in a big Italian family, how his grandmother had taught him to cook, how he'd moved to the city to find work and ended up at Mercer's because it paid better than most places. Louise told him about her contract job, about feeling trapped between the expectations at work and her own dreams, about never quite fitting into the life that was supposed to be hers. "You don't have to go back, you know," Tony said quietly. "Not if you don't want to. I have to eventually. My job doesn't own you." The words hung in the air between them. Louise set down her fork. "It's not that simple." "Maybe it is," Tony said. "Maybe we make things more complicated than they need to be." That night, after they'd finished eating and cleaned up, Tony pulled out his phone and played musical jazz, the kind that made you want to sway even if you didn't know how to dance. "Come here," he said, holding out his hand. "I don't dance." "Neither do I. That's what makes it fun." Louise let him pull her to her feet. They moved clumsily around the small space, bumping into furniture, laughing when they stepped on each other's feet. Tony spun her, and she stumbled into his chest. And for a moment they stood there, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat. "You're good at saving people," she said softly. "Only the ones worth saving." The days blurred into weeks. Louise found a rhythm helping Tony with groceries, cleaning the apartment, cooking meals together. They fell into an easy partnership that felt more like family than anything she'd known before. One rainy afternoon, they were curled up on opposite ends of the couch, sharing a blanket, when Tony looked at her and said, "I'm glad you're here." "Me too," Louise replied. "No, I mean," he hesitated. "I like having you here. It feels right." Louise's heart stuttered. She'd been trying not to think too much about the way she felt when Tony smiled at her, or the warmth that spread through her chest when he came home from work and immediately asked about her day. But now, with him looking at her like that, she couldn't pretend anymore. "It feels right for me too," she said. Tony reached across the space between them and took her hand. His fingers were warm, calloused from work. "I know this probably isn't the right time, and I know you're dealing with a lot." "But Louise, yes," she said, before he could finish. He blinked. Yes, I feel the same way. Yes, this is real. Yes, I want to stay here with you." Tony's smile was like sunrise. He pulled her closer, and she let herself fall into him, into this quiet, unexpected love that had grown in the safety of his small apartment. They kissed, soft and sweet, and Louise thought maybe this was what it was supposed to feel like. Not a transaction, not an obligation, just two people choosing each other. For the first time since her birthday, Louise felt hopeful. Like maybe she could build a life here. Like maybe she didn't need the world she'd left behind. But hope, she was about to learn, was a fragile thing. The knock on the door came on a Tuesday evening. Tony was at work, and Louise was making tea, humming to herself, when the sound shattered the quiet. She froze. Nobody ever came to the door. "Louise." A voice called from the other side. Familiar. Female. "I know you're in there. Please. We need to talk." Louise's hands shook as she approached the door. She looked through the peephole and saw her roommate from the staff quarters, Tessa, standing in the hallway, her face drawn and worried. Her roommate. How had she found her? Please, Tessa called again. It's about Mr. Harper. He's in trouble. Louise's stomach dropped. She unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. Tessa looked more exhausted than Louise had ever seen, her eyes red, hair pulled back in a rushed bun. Thank God, Louise, we've been looking everywhere for you. How did you find me? HR pulled access logs, and Mr. Harper had people asking around at the club. One of the staff mentioned seeing you leave with Tony. Tessa glanced past her into the apartment. Can I come in? Louise didn't move. What's wrong with Mr. Harper? Tessa's face crumpled. Everything. Louise sat across from Tessa at Tony's small table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Tessa had been talking for 10 minutes, and with every word, Louise felt the life she'd built here crumbling. He's going to lose the company, Tessa said again, as if repeating it would make Louise understand faster. Maybe everything. And it's not just him. If this goes under, all of us are out of a job. No severance. Nothing. Why? Louise's voice was flat. Tessa exhaled shakily. He owes money. A lot of money. Cash uncovered some of the cash flow gaps before. Quiet loans, private agreements. This time it's bigger. Harper mismanaged funds, tried to plug holes with more credit, and now everything's catching up to him. How much? Tessa swallowed. 200,000. Maybe more. The number hit Louise like a slap. 200 how? Bad projections. Overpromising. Gambling on campaigns that didn't convert. And then, Tessa lowered her voice, some personal losses too. He thought he could fix it before anyone noticed. He couldn't. Louise stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. That's his problem. He's the one who messed up. I know. Tessa stood too. But there's another layer. The money he owes, some of it is tied to Mercer's private loan. And Cashin, he's willing to forgive the entire company debt. All of it. If what? Tessa wouldn't meet her eyes. If you agree to marry him. The room tilted. Louise gripped the back of the chair to steady herself. That's why. That's why he pushed so hard. That's why he arranged the whole thing. He saw you as the bridge, Tessa said softly. He kept saying Cashin liked you. That you were the win-win, you get security. He saves the company. He sold me. The words came out strangled. My own boss tried to sell me to his billionaire creditor to cover his mistakes. It's not that simple. Then what is it like? Louise's voice cracked. Tell me, Tessa. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. He's still the one who gave you that job when HR said your resume wasn't strong enough. He stuck his neck out. And now, if this goes bad, it's not just him. It's everyone. The assistants, the cleaners, the junior staff. We all go down with him. Louise felt sick. She thought of the interns who shared lunch in the break room, the receptionist who always slipped her extra coffee, the cleaners who worked late into the night. I need to think, Louise said. There's no time. I said I need to think. The shout surprised both of them. Louise never raised her voice. Tessa backed toward the door. Harper is at the office. He wants to talk to you. Just come see him, please. She left before Louise could respond. Louise stood alone in the apartment, the silence pressing in. She looked around at the life she'd built here, the dishes she and Tony had washed together, the blanket they'd shared, the small space that had become her refuge, and she knew it was already over. When Tony came home 2 hours later, he found Louise sitting in the dark, her knees pulled to her chest. Hey, he said softly, crouching beside her. What happened? She told him everything. About Tessa's visit, about Harper's debts, about Cashin's condition. Tony listened without interrupting, his hand finding hers in the darkness. What are you going to do? He asked when she finished. I don't know. You don't have to save him, Louise. He made his choices. He's my boss. If the company collapses, it's not just him. All those people. They lose everything, same way I would have. I've been in their shoes. And you're not his property. Tony's voice was fierce. You don't owe him your life as repayment for a contract job. Louise leaned into him, breathing in the familiar smell of his jacket. I have to go see him. I have to hear it from him. Then I'm coming with you. Tony, I'm not letting you do this alone. The office looked different on a weekday afternoon when you weren't supposed to be there. Lights dimmed, most cubicles empty, the hum of the building louder than usual. Louise stood in the lobby with Tony, gathering her courage. I'll wait out here, Tony said. If you need me, just text or scream. She managed a weak smile and went inside alone. Mr. Harper was in the corner office he'd once proudly called our command center. Now he looked like a man whose army had deserted him. Papers were spread across the desk, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed red. Louise. He stood so fast his chair rolled back. Thank God. Tessa said she found you. Why? Louise asked, staying near the door. Why didn't you just tell me the truth at the club? Instead of dressing it up like some generous fairy tale. Harper's shoulders slumped. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought I could fix it without dragging you into it. By marrying me off. By giving you a good life and saving the company at the same time, he said hoarsely. Cashin is rich, powerful. You'd never want for anything. And the firm, everyone who works here, they'd keep their jobs. You mean your mess would disappear? I made mistakes, he snapped, then seemed to catch himself. But not everything was selfish. I really did think he'd be good for you. That you deserve more than scraping by on contract work. You talked about me like a product, Louise said quietly. Like a bundle wrapped into your bailout package. Louise, I'm out of options. He moved around the desk toward her. If this deal falls through, the bank takes everything. Cashin backs out. We close our doors. Half the staff won't find work for months, maybe longer. You know how bad the market is. He looked broken, desperate. How much do you owe? She asked. About 200,000 in short-term obligations. His voice shook. Cashin took most of it on as a private guarantee. He's the only reason we haven't folded already. Louise stared at him, at this man who'd alternated between praising her and guilt-tripping her, and saw the truth. He wasn't a villain in a movie. He was a small, flawed man who'd gambled with other people's livelihoods and then tried to use her as a bandage. I came here because I thought maybe there was some explanation that didn't make me feel like a commodity, she said. Some way this all made sense. Louise, please, I'll do it. The words came out before she could stop them. I'll marry him. Harper sighed with relief. Thank you. Thank you. You're saving all of us. I'm not doing it for you, Louise said. I'm doing it because I can't live with the thought of dozens of people losing their jobs when I could have prevented it. But after this, you and I, we're done. You don't get to use my life as leverage ever again. She walked out before he could respond. Before the tears could fall, before she could take it back, Tony was waiting outside, exactly where she'd left him. One look at her face, and he knew. Louise, take me home, she whispered. Please, just take me home. They walked back to his apartment in silence. Louise felt like she was watching herself from a distance, like this was happening to someone else. When they got inside, Tony finally spoke. There has to be another way. There isn't. I can help. I have some savings. I can ask my family. Tony, it's $200,000. And even if we could scrape it together, Harper would just do this again. Mismanage something else. Oh, someone new. This is who he is. Then let him face the consequences. Louise turned to him, tears finally spilling over. I can't. Don't you see? If I don't do this, and the firm collapses and people lose everything, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have stopped it. I'll hate myself. Tony pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either. They stood there for a long time, holding each other, memorizing the feel of this the last moments before everything changed. What if we left? Tony said suddenly. Just took off. Went somewhere they couldn't find us. Louise pulled back to look at him. For a moment, she let herself imagine it disappearing with Tony, starting over somewhere new, leaving all of this behind. But she knew it was fantasy. Harper would still owe the debt, and even if the company folded, the people who worked there would pay the price. She'd spend her whole life wondering whose rent went unpaid, whose kids had to drop out of school because she said no. I can't, she whispered. Tony's face broke. Louise, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. She cupped his face in her hands. You gave me something I'd never had before. A choice, freedom, love that wasn't about what I could give someone, but just about me. And I'll carry that with me forever. This isn't over, Tony said fiercely. I'll find a way. I'll get you out of this. But they both knew he wouldn't. Louise kissed him, trying to pour everything she felt into that moment, all her love, all her gratitude, all her grief. Then she let him go. Louise stood outside Cashin Mercer's penthouse, her hand hovering over the intercom button. 3 days had passed since she'd left Tony's apartment. 3 days of crying until she had no tears left, of lying awake at night remembering what it felt like to be free. Now she was here, about to walk into her cage. She pressed the button. Yes. The voice was crisp, professional. A doorman or assistant, Louise Harrington. For Mr. Mercer. A pause. Then, come up. The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Louise avoided looking at herself. She didn't want to see the girl who was giving up. The doors opened directly into the penthouse. Cashin was waiting in the foyer, dressed casually in slacks and a white shirt, a glass of scotch in his hand. Louise. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm glad you reconsidered. I'm here to accept your proposal, she said, her voice mechanical. On one condition. His eyebrow lifted. You're negotiating now. My boss's debt. You forgive all of it. Completely. And you make sure the firm doesn't get destroyed as collateral damage. People there don't deserve to go down because of this. Done. Cashin's answer was immediate. I already took care of it. The debt was transferred to me, and I've forgiven it. Harper and the company are safe for now. Louise felt no relief. Just emptiness. There's a contract, Cashin continued, gesturing toward the dining table where papers were laid out. Prenuptial agreement. Terms of the marriage. I've tried to be fair. Louise walked to the table and picked up the first page. The words swam in front of her eyes. Clauses about property, children, public appearances, fidelity expectations. You'll have your own room, Cashin said, coming to stand beside her. I'm not a monster, Louise. I won't force myself on you. When you're ready, we can discuss the more intimate aspects of our arrangement. But for now, this can be as much or as little as you need it to be. How generous, Louise said flatly. Cashin's jaw tightened. I know you don't want this. But I'm offering you a life most people only dream of. Security, luxury, anything you want, within reason, except freedom. Freedom is overrated. Cashin took a drink. I'll make you happy. It may not be the fairy tale you imagined, but I'll take care of you. Louise signed the papers without reading them. The wedding happened a week later, a small, elegant ceremony at a courthouse with only a few witnesses. Louise wore a simple white dress that Cashin had bought for her. She said her vows like an automaton, slipped the ring on her finger, and became Mrs. Cashin Mercer. The penthouse became her world. 43 stories above the city, surrounded by marble and glass and art that cost more than most people made in a lifetime. She had a closet full of designer clothes, a chef who prepared whatever she wanted, access to credit cards with no limit. She was miserable. Cashin kept his word. He gave her space, didn't demand anything she wasn't willing to give. He was polite, sometimes even kind. He bought her gifts, took her to dinners at restaurants with month-long waiting lists, introduced her to people whose names she'd only seen in magazines. But every night, she lay awake in her massive bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the cramped apartment where she'd been happy, remembering Tony's laugh, his terrible pancakes, the way he'd looked at her like she was extraordinary just for being herself. She'd tried to find him once, had gone back to the neighborhood, to his building, but he was gone. The landlord said he'd moved out suddenly, left no forwarding address. Louise hoped he'd found something better, someone better, a life that wasn't weighed down by her choices. One evening, 3 months into the marriage, Cashin came home early from work. Louise was sitting on the balcony, watching the sunset over the city. You're unhappy, he said, sitting in the chair beside her. Louise didn't deny it. I thought time would help, Cashin continued, that you'd adjust, but you're fading away. Every day, a little more of you disappears. This is what you wanted, Louise said quietly. A wife who could play the part. I wanted a partner. Someone real. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I'm not blind, Louise. I know you're in love with someone else. Her throat closed. The man from the club, Cashin said. The one who helped you escape, Antonio. Louise's head snapped toward him. How? I'm a billionaire. Finding information is easy. Cashin's voice was oddly gentle. I'm not angry. If anything, I'm sorry. For my part in this. For letting Harper and your situation at work manipulate the outcome. Then let me go, Louise whispered. Cashin was quiet for a long moment. I can't. Not because of the marriage we both know that's just paper, but because Harper will never stop being who he is. The mismanagement, the shortcuts that's in his blood. If you walk away now, and he falls again, there might not be someone like me in the wings. It could be a lender who doesn't care about staff or safety. People could get hurt, so I'm trapped forever. No. Cashin stood, straightening his jacket. But you need to decide what kind of life you want to have. If you want to spend the rest of our arrangement mourning what you lost, that's your choice. But if you want to try to make something bearable out of this situation, I'm willing to work with you. He left her on the balcony. Alone with the city lights. Louise sat there until long after dark, thinking about cages gold-plated and beautiful and suffocating. Thinking about Harper, who'd built this prison out of fear and selfishness. Thinking about Tony, who'd shown her what it felt like to breathe freely. And thinking about herself, the girl who'd sacrificed everything to keep a building full of strangers from losing their jobs. Who traded her own freedom to keep other people from drowning in someone else's mistakes. Maybe Cashin was right. Maybe she couldn't change the circumstances, but she could choose how to survive them. She stood, smoothing down her dress, designer, expensive, bought with money that felt like blood. And she walked back inside. My name is Louise, and this is my love story. Not the one I wanted, not the one I would have chosen. But the one I got when I decided that saving my boss and my colleagues was worth more than saving myself. People might think I'm just being difficult with Cashin, that I should be grateful for the luxury, the security, the life most people dream of. But they don't know what it cost. They don't know about the small apartment where I learned what freedom tasted like. They don't know about the man who asked for nothing and gave me everything that mattered. They don't know that every morning when I wake up in silk sheets, I think about worn blankets and burnt pancakes and love that wasn't a transaction. This is my love story, and it's only just beginning. If this story touched you, or made you think about what love and sacrifice really cost, type freedom in the comments so I know you stayed till the end. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next part of Louise's journey.